When he was just 11 years old, he told his teacher and classmates that one day he would be a blues musician. And what do you know? His dream became reality. Philipp Fankhauser is today, without a doubt, Switzerland's finest contemporary blues singer, and a very prolific one as well. He recently released his 15th album. And as Martina Fuchs found out, the 54-year-old is full of plans and projects, and not all of them have to do with music.
Welcome to Spotlight. He released his 15th album, I'll Be Around, in December in Switzerland, which was produced by Dennis Walker and Wolf Stevenson and recorded at the legendary Malaco Studios in Jackson, Mississippi. Several of his albums have charted in the top 10 of the Swiss music charts. And when he sings the blues, well, you wouldn't think he's Swiss. Welcome to the program, Philipp Fankhauser.
It's a pleasure to be here, Martina. Thank you.
So your latest album, I'll Be Around, was released here in the country in December. What have you been doing since? Touring a lot, I guess.
We have been touring heavily. As a matter of fact, it was released December 1st in Switzerland. And March 16th is when we released it in the rest of the world, sort of speaking.
Now, you recorded this album at the very legendary Malaco Studios in Jackson, Mississippi. How did you get there? I mean, so many very famous gospel and blues singers have worked there before.
That's really been a crazy story, as about 30 years ago on our Swiss national radio, that's now called Radio SRF3, there was this special hour called Black Music Special, and they introduced Malaco Records, and I heard a lot of my heroes like Bobby Bland or Johnny Taylor and Denise LaSalle, and I was so fascinated by the sound that I started collecting CDs and started collecting everything about Malaco.
I've been homeless since you threw me out of your heart. I'm homeless, yeah.
And about 20 years later, in early 2000, I traveled to Jackson with a group of motorcycle riders. And we had an engine problem, and we were stuck in Jackson, Mississippi. So I remembered Malaco, and I called up the studio and said, I need some entertainment for my group. Can we come by and visit? And so we did. And Wolf Stevenson expected us at the door, and he gave us a tour of that fantastic location. And so we stayed in touch. And in 2016, he said, after the big tornado they had in 2011, he said they would open for, record musicians that are not on Malaco Records. And so I called Dennis Walker and brought the two together, and were able to record it. That's very, very fantastic location.
Your album is very mature. It's basically half blues and half soul. How would you describe it, and what is the key message?
I'm not so sure if there's a key message. I don't think blues musicians have key messages. I think it's a very interesting collection of, as you said, soul and blues songs and blues soul songs, some ballads, a little gospel. I think the key message is just every single song to us, first time on an album, every single song has a great meaning, and a great meaning to us, and it's a great pleasure to play the songs on stage. As a matter of fact, we play them all, and it's just so well recorded and so well written. There's songs by legendary George Jackson on it. Dennis Walker contributed songs. We wrote some. So I think the key message is joy.
Now, if people listen to you perform and sing, they wouldn't think that you are Swiss. You have a voice that is so deep. It could be from southern, United States. How do you feel about that?
Thank you for that compliment. I think it's interesting when I speak, it's clearly detectable. something is wrong with the guy. He's not American. When I sing, I hear a lot of that compliment. I think it's a matter of the teachers I had. Legendary Texas bluesman Johnny Copeland and the great Margie Evans from Louisiana, who really, really taught me, and also my producer. And Margie Evans once said, it's not a thing, it's a thing. So, you know.
That really sounds like Texas or somewhere down in the Mississippi Delta. So how did you build this network to other, you know, legendary and really famous blues musicians and singers?
Well, you know, I decided to become a blues singer when I was 11 years old. I'm 54 now, so it's been a while, and I have been listening very, very closely. And in my early teens, I went to literally hundreds of concerts. From Buddy Guy to Albert King. I missed Muddy Waters, unfortunately. He died before I could ever see him live. I saw Jimmy Witherspoon. I saw a lot of blues performers. And I have what you would call, I have the patience to listen. I always first listen before I speak. And so I literally sucked in all the information I could get from these people. And I started bothering them backstage, you know. I had the nerve to go backstage at the Montreux Jazz Festival and just ask Johnny Copeland if I could like speak a word to him. And so over the years, I guess I just got introduced to many of the great blues singers.
Does it mean bigger, you know, business opportunities, a larger stage, or just because you think the Swiss market is maybe just too tiny and lacking financial support as well?
I did write a few songs in my native language, Schweizerdeutsch. So far, none of these songs are worthy to be performed in public. I'm still working on this. As a matter of fact, I have just met one of the greats in Swiss comedy, Franz Hohler, and I did ask him if he would help me to write maybe a song in Swiss German. I grew up with English-speaking music. I've never considered anything else.
Now you consider I'll Be Around as your second musical half of life. What lies ahead for you, Philipp, in the second part of your life?
You know, when I was 20, I think when I was 20 in 1984, one of my first interviews, I stated that I would love to do this to old age, at least to 80. You know, B.B. King made it to 87, 80, 88. So I find it fantastic that as a blues singer, it seems to me the older you get, the more you're taken seriously. So what lies ahead of me is probably just being that 75-year-old guy that's still on stage and still singing and playing the blues and really, really enjoying this music.
We look definitely forward to many more performances. Now, coming back a little bit to the US music industry, how has, you know, for example, the #MeToo movement or the Black Panther movie changed the culture industry in the States? As you go there so frequently, is there a new awareness and maybe a new culture arising?
I would certainly hope so. On the other hand, I believe that these power games, you know, as especially in that Me Too movement, these power games of the wealthy and of the powerful people have always been around, and I would love to see a change. I'm not so sure that change will come so fast. I think it will need a few new generations, and it will need more education and more awareness to bring a real change. But of course, it is fantastic that it started. You know, it has to start somewhere, and hopefully over the next years and decades will really bring a change.
And how do you see the musical landscape here in Switzerland, especially the blues? Is it a very tiny market, just you and a few others, or do you see a lot of room for growth here?
You know, it's really interesting. I think from the majority of my audience, I'm not even considered blues, meaning I don't see, like, the Swiss music scene seems to me it's more like it's like one scene. I mean, of course, you know, there's a hip hop audience and there's more a rock audience, but actually, you know, if you look at the landscape, it's not so much blues and jazz and rock. I think it's one scene. As a matter of fact, most of the music clubs and the music venues we have play different styles of music. So we don't have blues clubs or rock clubs.
It's like a big fusion of different
it seems to be a big
styles
fusion.
and
Also because the country is not big enough for, you know, to have various big scenes that could be supporting. So I play in venues where everybody else plays too. It seems to me in the U.S. that's a little different, where there's actually blues clubs and there's country clubs. There's a blues scene, there's a country scene. This is more of a big happy family almost.
What kind of advice do you have for young and upcoming artists here in Switzerland, Philipp?
First, I am very happy to see that there is a lot of good new music coming out. And I'm fascinated by the courage of kids today starting in the music business, considering that the whole analog music market has actually almost vanished, that people use downloads and streams and not so much CDs or LPs or cassettes anymore. So that whole branch of income has sort of just gone away. And I find it very courageous. And my advice would be just stay on it, just stay with it. It's not a matter of a year, it's a matter of decades and decades and decades of work and passion and dedication. And next thing you know, you're on the road 30, 40, 50 years, and it feels good.
Now, in other news, you're also a tea junkie and you're planning to launch your own iced tea business this fall. Tell me about it, Philipp.
Well, look, in 1987, I had my first glass of iced tea in New Orleans, Louisiana.
And that changed your life?
It changed my life because what we know here under iced tea is this sugary, brown, weird kind of, has nothing to do with tea sort of drink. And when I first tasted cold black tea, that's all it is iced tea. That changed my life as far as when I came back to Switzerland. I started drinking all my black tea that I drink at least 4 or 5 cups a day without sugar. So it saved me about a ton of sugar that went through my system. And I've been searching for unsweetened iced tea in Switzerland ever since. So the first thing I do when I land in the US at the airport, I drink an iced tea. And you just can't find it. So I'll just have to bring it myself.
And the name of the company is actually going to be Big Easy Tea Brewers. It sounds a little bit like blues inspired. When are you planning to launch production, and will we be able to buy it at the supermarket at some point?
No, it's the system will only be available at the restaurants and at hotels because it will be freshly brewed, just like in the US. It will not be bottled, it will not be conserved. All it will be is fresh tea, hot water, brew the tea, serve it to the guests. So there's no plan yet to, bottle it. And you shall be able to go to the hotel and ask for an iced tea and get a glass of real cold, unsweetened, unsugared, unconserved tea.
Back to music before we go, Philipp. You've performed about 2,000 times in your lifetime so far. What's next for you?
Another 2,000, I would hope, or maybe even more. So right now we play, I'd say about 80 to 90, sometimes 100 shows. We will be in Germany in April and in May. We have quite a few very interesting shows there. But other than that, I would love to play 150 to 180 shows a year, considering B.B. King in his heydays performed 330 one-nighters per year. So we would have to tremendously enlarge our market, you know, go to Poland, go to Spain, go to Italy, and that lies ahead, I would hope.
And I wish you all the best, Philipp, and I can't wait to drink your iced tea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Martina.
much.
Thank you,
Philipp.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.